If you think performance in intimacy is only about what happens in the moment, you are already missing the most powerful secret that transforms everything long before any physical connection even begins. Because what you do at night, in silence when no one is watching, is often what decides how confident, how present, and how naturally powerful you feel when it actually matters the next day. There is a quiet nighttime ritual that many men overlook, not because it is complicated, but because it feels too simple to be life-changing. Yet when done correctly and consistently, it can completely shift how the body responds, how the mind relaxes, and how performance becomes less about pressure and more about flow. The idea is not about chasing shortcuts or artificial boosts, but about rebuilding the connection between your nervous system, your circulation, your hormones, and your emotional state through something as grounding as a nighttime oil routine that signals your body to recover, reset, and restore itself at a deeper level. Most men go to bed carrying stress they never released, tension they never addressed, and mental noise they never quieted, and then wonder why their energy feels inconsistent, or why confidence in intimacy feels like something they have to force, instead of something that naturally exists within them. This is where the nighttime oil routine becomes more than just skincare or self-care. It becomes a signal to your body that it is safe, that it can relax deeply, and that it can begin the internal repair processes that directly influence stamina, presence, and performance. When you use natural oils as part of a structured nighttime ritual, you are not just applying something to your skin, you are engaging your sense of touch, temperature, scent, and rhythm in a way that communicates directly with your nervous system, slowly shifting it from a high-stress sympathetic state into a calmer parasympathetic state where recovery, circulation, and hormonal balance improve naturally. This matters because true performance is not built in moments of pressure, but in moments of recovery, and the body that sleeps deeply, relaxes fully, and circulates efficiently will always outperform the body that is tense, overstimulated, and constantly stuck in stress mode. The oil routine itself begins with intention, not product selection, because the real transformation happens when you stop treating your body like a machine that only needs maintenance when something is wrong, and start treating it like a system that responds to consistent care and attention. When warm oil is gently applied to areas of the body that hold tension, such as the neck, shoulders, chest, and even lower abdominal regions, it encourages blood flow in a natural, non-invasive way, helping muscles release stored tightness that often goes unnoticed during the day. This release is not just physical, because tension stored in the body often mirrors emotional pressure, anxiety, and subconscious stress related to performance expectations, relationships, or self-image. As the oil warms on the skin and your hands move in slow, deliberate motion, the body begins to recognize safety, and that recognition is what allows deeper physiological processes to activate, including improved circulation and better oxygen delivery throughout the system. Over time, this kind of routine can contribute to a more balanced internal environment, where energy is not constantly being drained by stress, but instead being preserved and restored during rest, which is exactly what supports consistency in intimate performance. Another overlooked aspect of this nighttime practice is the psychological conditioning it creates. Because repetition at night builds identity over time, and when your body associates nighttime with relaxation, care, and grounding touch, it begins to shift away from patterns of overstimulation that often interfere with natural responsiveness. Many men today are unknowingly overstimulated throughout the day, whether through digital content, stress, or constant mental multitasking, and this overstimulation carries into the night, disrupting sleep quality and recovery. The oil routine acts as a reset mechanism, slowing everything down, bringing awareness back into the body, and helping you reconnect with physical presence in a calm and controlled way. It is not about excitement or stimulation, but about regulation, because regulation is what creates stability, and stability is what creates reliable performance when it matters most. As this routine continues over days and weeks, the subtle changes begin to accumulate, and you may notice not only improved relaxation at night, but also a more grounded sense of confidence during the day. Because confidence in intimacy is rarely built in the moment. It is built in the quiet habits that shape how your body feels about itself when no external pressure is present. The oils used in such a routine are often natural carriers that support skin health, hydration, and sensory awareness, but their true power lies in how they are used, not just what they are. Slow application, mindful breathing, and intentional touch transform a simple act into a full-body reset experience that tells your nervous system it can stop bracing and start restoring. When the nervous system is no longer in a constant state of alert, blood flow becomes more efficient, hormonal rhythms stabilize more easily, and the body's natural responsiveness improves without force or strain. This is where many people misunderstand performance entirely, because they chase intensity when what they actually need is regulation. They chase stimulation when what they actually need is recovery, and they chase external solutions when the real shift begins internally. The nighttime oil routines is not a trick, not a hack, and not a quick fix. It is a consistent signal to your body that it can rebuild itself every night in a calm and structured way. And over time, that signal becomes part of how your system operates by default. As this practice deepens, it also changes how you relate to touch and presence in general, because when your body becomes accustomed to mindful, grounding contact, it becomes more responsive, more aware, and more naturally attuned to connection rather than tension or hesitation. And this is where we begin to understand that performance in intimacy is not separate from overall well-being, but deeply connected to how you sleep, how you recover, how you manage stress, and how consistently you create space for your body to return to balance. This is only the beginning of the process, because once the foundation of relaxation and nervous system regulation is established through this nighttime oil routine, the deeper layers of hormonal balance, emotional confidence, and sustained performance begin to unfold in ways that feel natural rather than forced. When this nighttime oil routine becomes part of your life, instead of something you try occasionally, the real shift begins in how your body learns to respond to consistency rather than chaos, because the nervous system is not influenced by single actions, but by repeated patterns that signal safety or stress over time. Most men underestimate how deeply their daily rhythm affects their intimate performance, assuming it is only about physical strength or momentary arousal, when in reality the body is constantly tracking signals from sleep quality, stress levels, touch, breathing patterns, and even the emotional tone of the day. As you continue the oil routine at night, something subtle begins to happen that many do not immediately recognize. And that is the gradual unwinding of internal tension that has been stored for years without conscious awareness. This tension is not always felt as pain or discomfort, but often as restlessness, mental overactivity, or a sense of being disconnected from the body during moments that require presence. The slow, intentional application of oil becomes a form of communication with the body, telling it that it is no longer in a state of urgency, no longer preparing for pressure, and no longer bracing for performance demands. Instead, it begins to understand that recovery is not optional but expected, and in that expectation, the body starts to shift its baseline state. This is where circulation naturally improves, not because of force or stimulation, but because relaxation allows blood flow to redistribute more efficiently, supporting not just physical recovery, but also the internal systems that contribute to energy regulation and endurance. At the same time, the mind begins to detach from the constant cycle of comparison, pressure, and expectation that often surrounds modern ideas of masculinity and performance, and instead enters a more grounded awareness of sensation and presence. This mental shift is just as important as the physical one, because performance anxiety is rarely about the body itself, but about the mental noise that interferes with natural response. As the oil routine continues night after night, it becomes a form of grounding ritual, where the body and mind reconnect in a way that is often missing in fast-paced daily life. And this reconnection slowly rebuilds confidence from within, rather than from external validation. One of the most overlooked benefits of this process is how it influences sleep quality, because when the nervous system is calm before sleep, the body is able to enter deeper restorative cycles, which are essential for hormonal balance and energy regulation. Many men operate on fragmented rest without realizing how much this affects their overall vitality, and over time this creates inconsistency in both energy and performance. The oil routine, when practiced consistently, acts as a bridge between wakefulness and rest, helping the body transition smoothly instead of carrying tension into sleep. This transition is not just about falling asleep faster, but about entering a deeper state of recovery where the body can repair tissues, regulate stress hormones, and restore internal balance more effectively. As this pattern strengthens, the morning experience also begins to change, with a clearer sense of energy, improved focus, and a more stable emotional baseline, all of which indirectly contribute to a more confident presence in intimate situations. What is often misunderstood is that performance is not built in the moment of action, but in the accumulation of habits that support or drain the system long before that moment arrives. The oil routine becomes one of those foundational habits that quietly builds resilience without requiring intense effort or dramatic lifestyle changes. Another important layer of this practice is how it reintroduces intentional touch into a man's relationship with his own body. Because in modern life, touch is often rushed, functional, or completely absent outside of intimacy, which can create a subtle disconnect between awareness and sensation. By slowing down and applying oil with mindful attention, the body begins to reawaken sensory pathways that enhance awareness, allowing a deeper connection to physical presence that is calm rather than reactive. This heightened awareness does not create overstimulation. Instead, it creates clarity, where the body's signals are easier to interpret and respond to without confusion or tension. Over time, this can translate into a more natural sense of responsiveness and comfort in intimate settings, because the body is no longer operating from a place of suppression or overload, but from a balanced state of awareness. The emotional aspect of this routine is equally important, because many performance challenges are rooted not in physical limitations but in emotional pressure, fear of judgment, or internalized expectations that create unnecessary stress. As the nightly ritual continues, it becomes a private space where those pressures are temporarily set aside, allowing the body to exist without evaluation or demand. This creates emotional relief that is often underestimated. Yet it plays a major role in how the body responds under closeness and connection. When emotional tension decreases, physical responsiveness naturally improves, not because of force, but because the body no longer feels it needs to defend or protect itself. In this way, the oil routine becomes more than a physical practice. It becomes a form of emotional decompression that supports both mental clarity and bodily ease. As these layers continue to integrate over time, the sense of performance shifts entirely from something that is managed to something that is simply expressed, because the body is no longer fragmented between stress, thought, and sensation, but operating as a more unified system. This is the stage where many men begin to notice that confidence feels less like something they have to build in the moment, and more like something that is already present, because the internal conditions that support it are consistently maintained. The routine does not create a new version of you. It removes the barriers that were interfering with the version of you that already exists beneath stress and fatigue. And as this understanding deepens, the nighttime ritual becomes less about oils and more about identity, discipline, and the quiet power of consistency that transforms not just performance, but the entire relationship a man has with his own body and presence. We are now moving toward the deeper layer of how this routine ultimately shapes long-term intimacy, emotional connection, and sustained confidence, where the real transformation becomes fully visible in everyday life rather than just theory. As this nighttime oil routine continues to settle deeper into a man's lifestyle, something more profound begins to emerge beyond relaxation, sleep quality, or even physical responsiveness. And that is the restructuring of how confidence itself is formed within the body. Confidence in intimacy is often misunderstood as something loud, visible, or performative, when in reality the most stable confidence is quiet, internal, and built from a consistent sense of self-regulation. When the body learns night after night that it can release tension, slow down, and enter recovery without resistance, it stops living in a constant state of subtle preparedness or defense. That shift alone changes everything about how a man shows up in close, vulnerable, and emotionally charged moments. Because when the nervous system is no longer overactive, the mind no longer feels the need to control every outcome. And when control decreases, presence increases. Presence is what allows real connection to feel natural rather than forced. And it is also what removes the invisible pressure that often disrupts performance before anything physical even happens. Over time, this routine teaches the body that stillness is safe, that rest is productive, and that slowing down does not mean losing strength, but actually rebuilding it. This is where the deeper transformation begins, because the body stops associating intimacy or closeness with performance pressure and starts associating it with calm awareness and grounded responsiveness. The oils themselves remain simple, but their repeated use becomes symbolic of something far more important, which is self-maintenance without urgency. In a world where many men only respond to their bodies when something feels wrong, this nightly practice introduces a different philosophy entirely, one where care is not reactive but consistent. That consistency slowly rewires internal expectations, and those expectations shape how the body behaves under stress, under rest, and under emotional closeness. As this internal rewiring continues, many begin to notice that their energy throughout the day becomes more stable, not because they are pushing harder, but because they are recovering better. Recovery is often the missing link in conversations about performance, yet it is the foundation upon which everything else depends. Without proper recovery, the nervous system remains fragmented, sleep remains shallow, and emotional resilience becomes unstable. With consistent recovery, however, the body begins to operate with more efficiency, using less energy for stress responses and more energy for presence, focus, and connection. Another important change that develops subtly is the way touch is experienced and understood. When a man engages in mindful self-application of oil each night, his sensitivity to touch becomes more refined, not in an overstimulated way, but in a grounded, aware way that enhances perception rather than overwhelming it. This increased awareness naturally translates into more comfort with closeness, because the body is no longer numb to sensation nor reactive to it, but balanced in how it receives and processes it. Emotional regulation also deepens during this phase, because the nightly ritual becomes a space where accumulated mental noise is gently reduced. Thoughts that were carried from the day do not remain stuck in the body through sleep, but are instead softened through slow, intentional physical care. This reduction in mental load has a direct impact on how a man relates to pressure in intimate situations. Because pressure thrives in overstimulated minds and underprocessed emotions. When those layers begin to calm, performance anxiety loses its intensity, not because it is suppressed, but because it is no longer reinforced by internal tension. As the routine matures, there is also a noticeable shift in how desire itself is experienced. Instead of being tied to urgency, distraction, or external triggers, it becomes more naturally aligned with emotional presence and physical calmness. This does not mean intensity disappears. Rather, it becomes more controlled, more connected, and more aligned with genuine sensation rather than mental acceleration. This is an important distinction, because many people assume that relaxation reduces vitality, when in reality it refines it. A calm system is not a dull system. It is a responsive system, one that can adapt, sustain, and engage without burning out. Over weeks and months, this responsiveness becomes the new baseline, and what once felt inconsistent begins to feel steady and reliable. That reliability is where true confidence is built, because confidence is not the absence of challenges, but the trust that your body will respond appropriately under different conditions. The nighttime oil routine contributes to that trust in a quiet but powerful way, by repeatedly reinforcing the message that the body is safe, supported, and capable of restoring itself. Eventually, this practice also begins to influence emotional connection beyond the self, because when a man becomes more grounded in his own body, he naturally becomes more present with others. Presence is the foundation of intimacy, not technique, not pressure, and not expectation. It is the ability to remain fully engaged without fragmentation between thought and sensation. And that level of engagement is only possible when the internal system is not overloaded with stress or depletion. This is why such a simple nightly ritual can have effects that extend far beyond physical recovery, touching emotional intelligence, relational depth, and long-term stability in intimate experiences. In the end, the nighttime oil routine is not about oils at all. It is about teaching the body a new language, a language of consistency, calmness, and restoration. It is about shifting from a life driven by reactive energy to a life supported by intentional recovery. And it is about understanding that performance in intimacy is not something you chase in a single moment, but something you build quietly every night, when you choose to care for your body in a way that tells it no longer needs to operate under stress. When that message is repeated enough times, the body begins to believe it. And when the body believes it, everything from energy to confidence to presence begins to reflect that belief naturally. That is the real transformation, not in intensity, but in stability, not in pressure, but in flow, and not in effort, but in the quiet discipline of nightly restoration that changes everything from the inside out.